Hi, I'm Shelley Wood, and this is my tiny sewing room where I make doll clothes sewing videos. Today I'm going to show you how to make this simple but elegant wedding dress, which is designed to fit most 11 to 11.5-inch fashion dolls like Barbie, Queens of Africa, and similar sized dolls. Before we begin, please visit my website, shelleywood.com, to download and print this free PDF sewing pattern. It will include a bodice pattern and 3 skirt pieces. There are tabs on each skirt piece, so you can easily put them together like a jigsaw puzzle. Here's a quick video of me putting those pieces together, and I'm just using Scotch tape to tape them together, and you can see that there's a little tab that shows you where to add a piece to another. Cut your skirt out on the fold, which means we'll be working with a lot of fabric. In order to achieve the extra full skirt, we'll also add a lace petticoat, which will be sewn under the cotton skirt. And to add even more glisten to the project, we'll add a top layer of white satin skirting on top of the cotton skirt. The straps are super easy, as they're made from 1/8 inch offray ribbon. The bodice will be made of felt, which is both flexible and easy to work with. So if you're new to sewing, don't panic. I'll walk you through this one step at a time. So here is our bodice. It's made of felt, and if you cut it according to the pattern, then you might have cut it on the fold, but you actually don't want that for the felt. You only want one piece with the darts. And because felt has this nice edging, we won't need to hem it. You're going to need a piece of lace, but tulle will also work for this. Now my lace happens to have across the bottom a scalloped edge, so I didn't have to hem it. Tulle also does not need to be hemmed. But we will need to sew these edges where you see my hands. Now we've cut this on the fold. For those of you who are new to sewing, I will show you how to cut this on the fold in just a little bit later part of this video. But what that initially means is that it's a very long piece of fabric for all 3 skirt pieces. Now here's my cotton piece, and you can see that you can't see my hand through the cotton, which is why this is an essential layer. We do have a rough edge here that will need to be hemmed, and I'll walk you through the hemming when we get there. And this is also cut on the fold. Then we have a piece of very silky satiny fabric. It's actually a polyester satin. Polyester easily frays, so we will need to hem it, and you can see my hand through it, but down here at the bottom it's a raw edge. So we're going to be sewing all the edges of this satin, and satin is tricky to work with. Now starting with the cotton skirt, you're going to create a hem by folding once and then a second time. Normally I whip stitch my hems, but because the skirt piece is so long, I went ahead and used my sewing machine. The key to making your hems work well is to compare and make sure that the length from here to here is exactly the same from one end of the skirt to the other. So as I'm hemming, I constantly compare the lengths from one end to the other. Try to keep this in mind as you work on the hems. Go back and measure each edge. Now hem your satin skirt. Now satin is tricky to work with, And so I do recommend hemming this by hand if you don't have a walking foot. You're going to fold it once and then a second time to create a hem. Now I used a sewing machine for my satin's hem, but I have a walking foot, and satin does tend to be harder to work with, so you may want to whip stitch by hand. Okay, just make sure that the lengths match like you see here. Your lace skirt needs to be a little bit shorter than the other two skirt fabrics, but you'll still cut it on the fold. So what I mean by shorter is, okay, here's my scalloped edge. I don't want that hanging out from underneath the skirt when it's finished. So I take my pattern and I fold it up about 1 inch. And you'll see I had to leave the room to go get my measurement tool. 1 inch is a little more than 2 centimeters. So what I did is I folded that and then I brought it down to the scallop or the edge of the tool. And you'll notice that my fabric has been folded. So I'm actually cutting it on the fold of the fabric. So when I pin it, I'm pinning 2 pieces of fabric here. They're folded right along the edge that's closest to you. See that folded edge? And that's what it means to cut on the fold. Now we're going to layer the 3 skirt pieces. The lace goes on the bottom as a petticoat. Lay the cotton on top of that with the hem side down, and then lay the satin over the cotton with the hem side down. Okay, to make sure you understand, here's my lace, here's my hem on my cotton, and I lay that over the top. Alright, now I can't see the lace underneath, and here is my satin and it goes over the top. It's helpful to baste the 3 layers together before you begin to gather them. Your baste stitch would run along the waist, along the edge directly opposite of the hems. However, I just pinned mine instead of basting, and that's okay too. The key idea here is to prevent the 3 fabrics from slipping apart while you do the gathers. Start your gathers 2 centimeters or 3/4 of an inch from the edge of the 3 fabrics. I'm using blue thread for my gathers, that's so you can see it. I want you to be able to easily see my stitches, but you should use white or off-white for your gathers. If you choose to pin your fabrics together, remove the pins as you come to them while gathering your 3 skirt pieces. Okay, so here I am gathering, and then I remove a pin as I get to it. Do not tie off your gather thread, but leave it attached as we work with the bodice. You don't want to knot it, you don't want to tie it off yet. Leave 3/4 of an inch ungathered on both sides. So here is my gather thread. It's still possible to pull these gathers, okay, to tighten them, and you'll see that my hem is down. It's on the underside on both the cotton and the satin pieces, and then of course I didn't need to hem on my scalloped edge of the lace, but it is hidden under the skirt. And that's what you should have for right now. Okay, we're going to work with the bodice, so fold the felt bodice along the dart's center line. This line is marked on your pattern. Stitch along the dart's outside lines. Again, the pattern shows where these lines are. Here's a closer look at my stitches. It's hard to see white thread against white felt, but I wanted to use white so that the blue doesn't show through. Fold the bodice's other dart and stitch to form an identical dart there. Clip away any excess fabric from both darts. So I'm going to clip this and then I'm going to clip that. Lay the bodice against the satin side of the skirt with the darts facing up like you see here. Pin your bodice to the skirt, leaving 2 centimeters or 3/4 inch of overhanging fabric on each side of the bodice. Once you have the bodice pinned in place, you can knot the gather thread and cut it free. Take a moment to unpin and adjust your gathers. Okay, so first I start by making sure that I've got my gathers nice and tight, and then I measure to make sure that I'm 2 centimeters away from the edge on that side. No gathers on that right side, no gathers on the left side. Then I begin to pin the bodice to the gathered skirt. Now I still have not tied off my gathers yet. I'm checking to make sure that my gathers are exactly right for the felt bodice. And I'm checking for that 2 centimeters, and now I'm going to go ahead and tie off my gathers with a little knot there. At that point I remove all my pins, okay, and then I adjust my gathers so they're even. And now I re-pin the bodice. This seems like a lot of work, but trust me, it's worth it. When you're working with a very tightly gathered skirt like this, you want to make sure those gathers are even. You don't want them to be thick on one side and thin on the other, and this is the trick to doing that. Back stitch the felt bodice to the skirt's gathers, removing the straight pins as you go. If you need help with a back stitch, I have a tutorial for that. Just look in the description below this video on YouTube. And you can see me having to go back and forth with my back stitch here. Because the gathers are very thick, I'm having to go back and forth. I can't just like the way quilters do. I can't just go in and out, but I have to go back and forth across those thick gathers. And that's normal. Now your dress should look like this. Flip up the bodice like this, and as you do so, be careful not to pull it too hard and tear the felt. Along one of the side edges, fold the 3 fabrics down, like you see me doing right here. And then fold the 3 fabrics in toward the skirt once and then a second time. Whip stitch to create a back closure area. Okay, can be tricky to understand that, so I'm going to show you. I flip up my bodice, and then I go over here on the left and I fold this down, including all 3 fabrics, and then I fold all 3 fabrics in once. I actually had to fold my lace a couple of times, and then a second time. Okay, and now I'm going to sew from my right thumb to my left thumb, creating an edge that's flush with the bodice. Follow these directions for both sides, creating a back closure. Whip stitch 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters to create your back closures. With the dress wrong side out, pin it onto your doll. I just used a straight pin to hold it in place. I'm using 1/8 inch or 3 millimeter wide offray ribbon to make my straps. Pin 1 ribbon to the felt bodice in back with about 1.5 centimeters of extra ribbon as shown here. Wrap the ribbon around to the front and pin it in place, aligning it to the bodice darts as best you can. Cut the ribbon free from the spool. Be careful not to cut the bodice's felt. Keep the straight pins in place until you've whip stitched the ribbon to the bodice. Attach both ribbon straps this way, following the same directions for each one. Okay, so I have my bodice on inside out. It's pinned on. I'm going to pin a ribbon in place. Okay, wrap it around, pin it in place, aligning it with the bodice dart, and then I cut it free. Now I do the other side, and sometimes you have to kind of work with that other straight pin to make sure you're not sewing or pinning the strap to the wrong side of the bodice. Okay, so they're aligned to the bodice darts in front, and in back I want to make sure I can still open the back. Fold the dress in half with right sides together, and you'll see me doing that here. So there are my straps all sewn on. I'm going to fold it in half with right sides together so the satin skirt touches the satin skirt. Sometimes you have to work a little bit to make sure all your skirt pieces are lined up well. And then I bring together that back closure area, and we stitch from the back closure area to the hem of the dress. I've left about a 2-inch or 4.5 centimeter area open at the back for the back closure. Invert the dress, which is what you see me doing here. And you want to be very gentle with those straps on the felt bodice. Okay. It is such a beautiful dress. Look at those little tiny, tiny straps. Now, to allow for the very full skirt, the bodice of this dress is quite long. So I attached 2 sets of snaps for my back closure because it will then overlap nicely like you see there. Now, if you need help sewing snaps on fabric, just look in the description for my tutorial on snaps. With the snaps all done, we're ready to try the dress on a doll. For more free printable PDF sewing patterns to fit dolls of many shapes and all different sizes, please remember to visit my website, shelleywood.com. Hey, did you know that you could design your own doll pants patterns from scratch with just a limited amount of sewing knowledge? Pattern design is made simple by connecting your doll's measurements with a template I give you during my course. I'm Shelley Wood, the doll clothing designer. I own Shelley Wood LLC and the website shelleywood.com. In my Creative Spark online learning course on doll pants design, I'll teach you the basic fundamentals of pattern design, like how do seam allowances work, before we move on to work on designing our own leggings, jeans, fly front pants, and even overalls. So please join me. I would love to see you on the Creative Spark online learning platform. Come see what we offer. Again, I'm Shelley Wood, one of the instructors.